Today we're going to be talking about this roller coaster called Fønix, also known as Fønix and Fønix, but I'm from Denmark and this is a Danish name and a Danish coaster, so hopefully I know how to pronounce the name Fønix, yes. And Fønix was of course an awesome addition to Sommerland in Denmark, so I was very excited to ride it 2 years ago, but I've never done a real proper review, so I'm gonna do it right now, man. And I could also remember when this coaster was revealed, everyone said that this was gonna be the best Vekoma coaster in the world, but it isn't true. You could shortly describe Fønix as a family thrill roller coaster, but with that said, it is really fun and enjoyable. It has some great innovative elements and we're gonna talk about them in a small second, man. First of all, let's quickly go over the stats of this ride because that's what you need when you do a proper review. Fønix stands 40 meters tall, that is 131.2 feet. And that makes it the tallest roller coaster in Denmark, and the top speed is 95 kilometers per hour, and that is 59 miles per hour, yes. And the length of the ride is 905 meters, and that is almost 3,000 feet. So now you have the basic stats of this ride. Now let us quickly go into this review of Fønix, and I'm gonna of course talk about every element on this ride layout and describe where it is best experienced, in the front, in the back or in the middle. And I've ridden this roller coaster over 30 times. So I think I have maybe a little bit to say here. It is very important to note that the whole park is located in a forest with very big trees, but Fønix is of course the only roller coaster that stands tall above the trees when you drive to Sommerland. And Fønix is of course placed in the back of the park. In all honesty, there isn't much theming to Fønix, but that doesn't matter because it is placed in a forest, so the landscaping looks awesome. Walking up to the Fønix roller coaster, there is of course a few tree houses and an entry point with Fønix banners to the side, and that looks cool. Fønix mainly has one or two great theming elements, and that is of course the station, which is built in a large and cool treehouse where the coaster actually passes through in a corkscrew. It is also very important to note that Fønix doesn't have any soundtracks or anything going on in the station. There's just the sound of people screaming going through the corkscrew, but that is mainly because of the park that has chosen not to do any soundtracks for the ride because it fits the theming of this park, a calm and collective forest. And there's also another tree house where the second train is in if it isn't a busy day, and there's also a few boxes outside you can go and look at, but you mainly look at the coaster of course when you're there, and they have already placed a cool pathway which leads to the main element, and that is the stall loop on this ride. So let's quickly go over the layout of this ride now. The first thing you do on Fønix is you board the train of course, and then you go out and take a left turn up to the lift hill, and here you can wave to the partners you have with you and the family members of course, and then you go up this lift hill, and this lift hill is actually pretty fast when it takes you to the top. And the drop on Fønix is pretty decent. It has some mild floater when you go down in the front row, but when you do it in the back row, it actually whips you because of the gravity. The train pulls you down, and that just feels better with the air time when you're in the back row. So the drop is of course the back row. After you have tried a great first drop, you quickly go into the first inversion of this roller coaster, and this is the world's first stall loop as it's called, and it is 25 meters tall to get a new world first thing, but it isn't. It gives you the hang time element that you want for a few seconds, so it's a great element. Riding in the front, you really get pushed very fast up in this element, and riding in the back, you receive the most amount of hang time, so I of course prefer the back of this element. The first time I was going to ride this roller coaster, I was very afraid that the stall loop was just a gimmick. Going out of the stall loop is really fun because it's a really fast-paced ride which makes it zigzag. I don't know what to call this drop, but it's awesome, and the pacing is amazing. The following element is half airtime hill and a half turn, but this is the only element on this ride that is best experienced in the front row, where you really get pushed up this airtime hill and you can feel the intense ejector airtime, and in the back it isn't really as strong. It's probably just a little bit of floater airtime, so it's best experienced at the front of course. And the only purpose of the turn is taking you to the next element. It doesn't really have any positive G-forces, and remember, it is just a family thrill coaster, not a thrill coaster. The next element is an inversion, and this is a brilliant designed hardline roll. It really whips you both in the front and in the back row, so there's nothing to say there. The only thing I can say is it is nothing like Velocicoaster's roll of course, but there's only one Mosasaurus roll in the world, so that's not comparable. After the hardline roll, you make your way to a double down where the first airtime hill is outer bank banked airtime hill. And the first hill doesn't really give you any airtime, perhaps a bit of floater airtime in the front but nothing in the back row. But the second hill, bunny hop, does give you a great amount of flowjector airtime both in the front and in the back row. Before the roll through the station you make your way over an S hill, and this is one of the great airtime moments on this ride. It gives you ejector airtime both in the front and in the back row again, of course. Before you quickly go through the station roll, you quickly need to look to the left and smile so you can get a cool on-ride picture on Fønix. Fønix. The station roll / inversion is of course a traditional corkscrew, and it looks very cool to film, but it is just the weakest inversion on this ride. But it isn't a bad inversion, it's just a normal corkscrew, so there's nothing wild to say here if you are an enthusiast. But the roll through the station on Fønix still does have a lot of character, because the point of the rider is actually that you need to scream as loud as you can when you go through this roll, because the rider's screams are really loud when you're standing in the station. So if you really don't know about this, you could get shocked by the sound of this because it's very loud. Some people find it very annoying, some people find it fun, but it's the character of the ride, of course. After the corkscrew through the station, you can really feel that Fønix still does have a lot of pacing to offer. You quickly go around and over this station area and into an outer bank airtime hill over the exit pathway. And this airtime hill is actually still one of the greatest airtime hills on the ride. And this is also one of the few elements that is best experienced in the front row of the ride. So I would recommend trying both the front and the back row of this ride, because it's very close. It is almost 50-50 if you want to choose the front or if you want to choose the back row. After this element you quickly twist down to 3 consecutive small bunny hills. All these 3 bunny hills doesn't really do much, sadly. I think these 3 little bunny hills give you a little bit of floater air time in the front and in the back row, but I really just prefer the back row because I can feel a bit more pull in my opinion. The 3 bunny hills can overall be described as mediocre. Now we're almost finished with the whole ride layout. We only have 2 more elements to describe. And yes, the next little element is yet another outer bank airtime hill. And this little airtime hill actually gives stronger airtime than the 3 consecutive bunny hills that you've just experienced. And this little element gives you a nice flowjector airtime moment, and it is best experienced, I don't know, if you like the pull in the back and if you like the push in the front. So this is a 50-50 again. And the last little element is just a little twist going to the right and into the brake run. It doesn't really do much for the ride. You don't feel anything, no laterals and no airtime. You can really feel on these last elements plus the bunny hills that Fønix is out of breath. So now we've gone through the whole ride layout on Fønix, and now I'm gonna talk about the best elements on this ride. The best elements on this ride in my opinion is actually all the inversions, and that is actually very surprising for me because I'm mainly an airtime guy. I would take any great airtime moment over any whippy and intense inversion. The stall loop is amazing and it gives great hang time, and the hardline roll also gives a very great whip, but the last inversion is just a corkscrew, but it still goes through a station, and the rider's job is also that you need to scream as loud as you can, so this corkscrew has a lot of character. Even though the inversions are the main elements, the airtime moments are still there. The first drop of course gives awesome airtime, especially the whip in the back is amazing, and also the airtime hill combined with the turn gives great ejector airtime throughout the whole train. And there's also many more great airtime moments such as the bunny hop, the S hill, the outer bank airtime hill after the station, and also in the end of the ride layout. And there's only a few dull moments on this ride, and that is the first airtime hill at the double down, and then the 3 last bunny hills and the last element.
Ooh, that's a bit boring, man.
So now it's that time of the video. I'm gonna give it a score from 1 to 10 as every other reviewer does, but I'm not very special then.
Oh, I'm a pick me boy.
Considering it's a family thrill ride, it's still a very good family thrill ride. It has all the intense inversions, yet another mix of cool airtime hills, which makes it a 9 out of 10 for me. Fønix is also a very good addition to Fall of Summerland because they needed another thrill coaster in their lineup, and it's also very good to see another record breaker in Denmark, especially for me as an enthusiast. Yet the ride still has a lot of character considering the lack of theming. It still has the awesome location in the trees, and and also the treehouse where you got the roll through the station, which gives a lot of character to this ride. Fønix still doesn't get a 10 out of 10 score, and the reasoning is the last section where it has a lot of dull airtime moments where you can't really feel any airtime / a bit of mild floater airtime. So that concludes my review. Did you love it? Did you hate it? Have you ridden Fønix? Are you Danish, or have you just traveled to Farup Sommerland to experience this ride? Let me know in the comments, and until next time, bye bye.